Shalom and welcome to today's Middle East Report. In this program today we'll be looking back at the life of Corrie Ten Boom, who rescued over 800 Jewish people during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. And we'll be asking in this program, what can we learn from the life of Corrie Ten Boom? Warm welcome to the program, and my special guest is all the way over from across the Atlantic in the United States. Her name is Susie Sandager. Welcome to the Middle East Report.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And Susie, in today's program we're talking about the life of Corrie Ten Boom, and for one particular reason is because you are an actress and you play Corrie Ten Boom. But before we start talking about your role as an actress, the importance and significance of Corrie Ten Boom, can you share how you came to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ?
I was taken to church when I was a child, and I like to say I was Christianized because that's what you did where I was from. And I probably as a child, I did believe in Jesus. But as I grew up, I left him. And as I became an adult, I had a conversion, I guess, that I really decided to follow Christ on my own without anyone influencing me. I began to read the Bible. In fact, I came to Christ, I was in my 30s, and I was visiting with a woman, and she was talking as if God was real. It was really strange. And I thought she was a perfectly normal person, except that she had such a relationship with God. And she provoked me to jealousy. And I wanted what she had. And I realized it was there all along. And I came to Christ and never turned back from that point on. And when I did that, at that juncture, I began reading the Bible, and I read Corrie Ten Boom's book, The Hiding Place. It was the first Christian autobiography I'd ever read. I think in that experience, I developed a love for the Jews, a reverence, an admiration for the Jewish people. Certainly from the Word of God, I could see that they were very important to him, and for the Jew first. And I got it. I understood it. And so that's where I got to start.
Oh, amazing. So when did the Lord really not only place a love of the Jewish people upon your heart, but really gave you this gift of acting? So tell us the story about how you became an actress and started playing the role of Corrie Ten Boom.
May I start backwards a little bit,
absolutely.
Simon? Because this love of the Jews that was birthed when I gave myself over to the Lord as an adult, I saw the tragedy that Jews and Christians were disconnected because we both loved the same God. And I began to learn about the Jewish history, and it was tragic to me that so much had been done to the Jews in the name of Jesus, the one that I had committed to. I decided to start a group where we would learn about the Jewish people, their land, their history, their faith, just a group of Christian women. And we would invite Jewish guests to present. These Jewish guests came, and they enjoyed themselves so much that they wanted to join our group. Our husbands began to want to join our group because the guests we were having were so very interesting. And over time, it became not just Christian women, but it's Christians and Jews. And the guests, the speakers became not just Jews, but Christians and Jews, men and women, and we had to have a name. And we came up with a name with the help of a Jewish professor at the university where I live, because every name we would come up with, he would translate it for us, and none of us could say it in Hebrew. He came up with the name Yad B'Yad, which is Hebrew for hand in hand, Christians and Jews, reaching out to take one another's hands.
Amazing.
And I want to read you the purpose statement, because we had to have a purpose statement. Now we read this purpose statement every meeting. It is our goal to relate to Israel and the Jewish people with kindness and respect, to be a source of solace and comfort, and to be a blessing to them by standing in solidarity with them in their times of need. We strive to reverse the tainted record of Christian witness toward Israel and to demonstrate in its place the genuine, unconditional love that God asks of us. We will raise Israel often in our prayers, develop sensitivity to Jewish concerns, and become knowledgeable of her land, people, history, and faith. We lend our talent and resources in cooperation for any important Jewish endeavors, including raising awareness of anti-Semitism and the plight of distressed Jews immigrating and resettling their homeland. The activities we organize must not be a vehicle for any activity that could be interpreted as proselytizing, but rather a hand extended to our Jewish neighbors, both here and in Israel, in deep apology, promised support, and love that does not require anything in return. May God be pleased when he sees us, Christian and Jew, reach out to take one another's hands. How good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. So with that mission, we began to build relationship within our community, Christians and Jews, which continues to this day. And that was more than 20 years ago.
Fabulous. I can sign up to
an
that.
amazing thing 20 years ago. I know we've come a long way in Jewish-Christian dialogue and interaction, but it was a very unique thing in the early years.
Amazing, amazing. So to the other question, how did you end up playing the role of Corrie Ten Boom?
So for this Yad B'Yad group, we needed speakers, programs. And one of our programs, we had invited a local actress who portrayed Golda Meir. She was brilliant.
Ah.
And it occurred to me that, oh, I have an idea for this actress. She could portray Corrie Ten Boom, the woman's book that I had just read. And I went to this actress and I laid out the whole plan to her. I took her to lunch. I had a stack of books and audio recordings of Miss Ten Boom. I even put headsets on the poor lady so she could hear Miss Ten Boom's Dutch accent. She sat there, again, she had never heard of Corrie Ten Boom. She listened, and when I finished my pitch, she said, "Oh, this is wonderful. This woman's story must be told." And I thought, ka-ching, she's going to do it. She's going to accept. And then she said, "But, my dear, I could never play this role. I'm a Jew." She said, "This role demands a Christian who loves the Jews. This is your role."
Wow.
Of course, but I can't act. I thought, what does she mean, me? I have no skill. She doesn't understand. I want this to be professional. And she said, no, you can do it. She said, "I can teach you to act." She said, "But I can't give you a Jewish heart. God gave you that." So I left the meeting a little disappointed and drove home grumbling to God the whole way, enumerating the reasons I could not portray Corrie Ten Boom, valid reasons. And my last reason was, and I'm too tall. Not knowing how tall Corrie Ten Boom was. She just looks short in her pictures, doesn't she?
She does, yes.
All right, I go back into the house, my home. I'd already had lunch once, but I made a sandwich because that's what I do when I'm depressed. And I sat down and started flipping through the books I had intended for her to take home. And my eyes landed on a line that said she was 5 feet 7 inches tall. Now that's my height. That surprised me, so I continued to read. And I learned that her primary ministry or work prior to World War II was with mentally handicapped children. My only biological child has Down syndrome. And when I read that, oh, my heart just, thumped. Miss Ten Boom not only loved the chosen people, she loved special people, like I love special people, my child and his friends. It was such a revelation, and I just looked upward and I said, I will try. So it took a year to research, write the script, affect a Dutch accent.
That can't be easy.
I'm sorry?
That's not easy.
That was something altogether different. And then more than anything else, though, Simon, it was the courage to go on stage. I wasn't even a public speaker at that juncture in my life. And but once I gave the first performance, I've never stopped. And that was over 18 years ago.
Amazing. So we have a look at you in action. Let's have a look at this news report all the way from the States, looking at Susie playing the role of Corrie Ten Boom.
Well, history will be made tomorrow in eastern Washington.
As hate crimes against Jewish communities increase nationwide, a special performance locally aims to spread goodness through different religions.
Cap KVU's Galen Etlin has the story you'll only see here on Cap KVU.
It's a story of faith, love, and forgiveness. One woman helped save hundreds of lives during the Holocaust, and now her story will be told on this stage in the Tri-Cities, soon to be taken around the world.
Not those colors.
Susan Sandager of Franklin, Kentucky.
That's where my accent comes from.
Never aspired to be an actress.
But here we are 18 years later.
The role, her calling.
Such a disconnect between Christians and Jews, and that's tragic.
Her role model, Corrie Ten Boom.
A Dutch Christian rescuer during the Holocaust.
In World War II, Corrie Ten Boom helped protect hundreds of Jews under persecution, driven by her Christianity to help others oppressed in the name of her God.
So much has been done in the name of Jesus that's been offensive and harmful.
Corrie Ten Boom eventually sent to a concentration camp, living to tell the tale. Now, Sandager using the story to connect Christians and Jews alike.
Yad bayad, that's Hebrew for hand in hand.
Without any training, Sandager, also a Christian, wrote a script, becoming Corrie Ten Boom in a one-woman show.
You'll never be the same after you see it.
Carol Darley owns a production company in Richland. She connected with Sandager years ago, kept in touch, and decided to help record the first professional taping of the show.
It's a big deal. I mean, she's done this worldwide, and we're getting it here.
The video taking Corrie to places Sandager can't go. First Assembly Church in Pasco donating the stage, volunteers giving $25,000 and hours of labor to build a unique set.
Truly, by the grace of God, people stepped up and stepped forward.
Sandager's performance timely. In the last few weeks, dozens of bomb threats targeting Jewish communities nationwide, synagogues and cemeteries desecrated.
And these are the things that were happening to the Jews in Nazi Germany.
Sandager as Corrie Ten Boom.
Very good.
Your placement was excellent.
Yes.
Calling for peace.
She came out of it speaking of love and hope and forgiveness and reconciliation.
Bridging spiritual borders. Not quite in Kentucky anymore.
I had to affect a Dutch accent.
Galen Etlin.
Two opposites, really.
Cap KVU Local News.
All right, Galen, incredible story there. Thank you. The tape show tomorrow is free and seats about 1,500 people. You can even be a part of the DVD testimonials from the audience. That's at Faith Assembly Church on Road 72 in Pasco. It starts at 7 p.m.
My life is but a weaving between my God and me. I do not choose the colors. He worketh steadily. Oft-time he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent and the shuttle cease to fly will God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads, they're as needful in the skillful weaver's hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern that he has planned.
Don't know about you, but that's very impressive. Susie, very impressed. You know, you portray Corrie Ten Boom incredibly well, and also with that very distinctive hairstyle that she had. I think that's immediately identify with Corrie Ten Boom. Can you tell us about your role as Corrie Ten Boom and what you learnt about her, playing her role, her character, her history, her background, and what she went to do, go on and do in rescuing over 800 Jewish people during World War II?
In researching the role, and I hope your audience know who Corrie Ten Boom was, have we covered it enough that she did rescue 800 people. She doesn't know how many of them survived, but probably 800 people came through their home as while they were in the underground, and they were ultimately betrayed and sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp. She and her sister ended up there. Almost the whole family, several members of the family died for their efforts to save the Jews. Certainly her sister, she watched her sister die in that concentration camp. Only she was, a week before they killed all the women of her age, she was released. While she was in concentration camp, her sister, as she was dying, was having visions of the work that she would do, that they would do after the war. And all these visions began to come true for Corrie Ten Boom. They were visions for her, not her sister. And she did travel all over the world, and she had such a love of the Lord and love for the Jews. She had a message of forgiveness, the liberating power of forgiveness, to the extent that she was able to forgive even the actual guard that was so cruel to her sister. Powerful stories about how powerful the love of Christ is in us. And I learned a lot traveling about dressing up like Corrie Ten Boom, because when you dress up like Corrie Ten Boom and start giving her sermons, I've transcribed a number of her sermons. If you're not right with the Lord, you've got to be right with the Lord to be giving those sermons. You've got to forgive people. That was the biggest lesson I think I learned from her, and she said it was one of the biggest lessons that she learned in concentration camp, was that dependence on the Lord and the power of forgiveness. Her sister inspired her to be able to forgive. And her story, I think of Isaiah 40, I think it is. Her story is so comforting to Jewish people. I love the Jews. And Isaiah 40 says, comfort my people. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Tell them their warfare is ended. They've paid double for their iniquity. And when we think of the Holocaust and the pain that has been brought to the Jewish people, who's going to comfort Jewish people if it's not us? Other Gentiles? No. It has to be the church. And I believe that our time has come that we must stand with the Jewish people, comfort them, be there. And what we started with Yad B'Yad is understanding their pain, understanding the Holocaust, learning the facts of their long history. Christians have the power to really stand with the Jews and bless God. If we want to love God and we want to show God love, we love what He loves.
Absolutely.
And that's the Jewish people. She and her family did that. People don't know maybe that 100 years before the Holocaust, Corrie Ten Boom's father had a visit from his pastor, who showed him in the Bible all the places that it said that the Jews would one day get their land back. And he said, we need to pray for this. And so Corrie Ten Boom's father started a prayer fellowship in his home. And he invited his friends and other Christians to come, and they prayed for the Jewish people and the return to the land of Israel. An amazing thing for those times. And those people do pray for Israel now, but 100+ years ago, that was a rare thing. 100 years after that prayer meeting was started, the Ten Booms were arrested in the very home where the prayer meeting started for the crime of hiding Jews. Corrie Ten Boom had a lesson there too. She said, when you pray for someone or something, often God makes you a part of the answer. And I remember that all the time. If I'm going to be praying for something or someone, I better be ready to also be a part of the answer. So Corrie Ten Boom's life and legacy is so rich. There's so much to it. You can pick up any of her sermons, I've found, and apply it to the life that we live today. That's why I love portraying Corrie Ten Boom. She was a simple woman. I'm a simple woman. We have the power to impact people with our simple lives. And I learned one other thing from Corrie Ten Boom, and that is that our testimonies can outlive us. I don't care where a person is in life. When they come to the Lord and begin living their life for the Lord, they can have a testimony that can outlive them. And people can talk about, well, my Aunt Margaret, and this is what she did and said. Isn't that wonderful that we can be remembered for what we did for the Lord? A lot of things we do will never be remembered, but the things we do for the Lord can be remembered.
Absolutely.
And
So
appreciated.
should we have a look now at the life of Corrie Ten Boom and what she had to endure in Nazi-occupied Netherlands?
On May 10, 1940, Nazi Germany forces invaded the Netherlands, overtaking the country in 5 days. On bombing raids, the German Luftwaffe dropped over 97 tons of explosives on the city of Rotterdam, forcing the Dutch to surrender. During the subsequent Nazi occupation, over 100,000 Dutch Jews would be rounded up and taken to concentration camps. Few would survive. In the face of these horrors, and at the threat of losing their own liberty, an elderly father and his 2 daughters risk everything to save the lives of these persecuted people. This is their true story, based on the testimony of the trio's only survivor. The youngest of 4 children, Corrie Ten Boom, was born in the Netherlands in 1892 to Caspar and Cornelia, both dedicated Christians. Caspar Ten Boom, or Haarlem's grand old man as he was known, was a devoted father and husband, and a man of high moral character, very much respected by the local community.
This is the city of Haarlem, located in the Netherlands. It's the capital of the province of North Holland. This is also the city where Corrie Ten Boom grew up. In fact, we're standing in front of her house, and it's a typical Dutch house. It's tall and narrow. The bottom floor served as a watch shop. That was the family-run business. And the floors above served as living quarters. The Ten Booms were a very dedicated Christian family with their values and norms firmly rooted in the Bible.
Father read every day from the Bible, and they had prayer. They also had varying translations of the Bible, which they shared together, French, German. Somebody even had a Hebrew one, I think. And the Bible was strongly a part of their life, and they lived by it.
Gives us a real insight into the life of Corrie Ten Boom. Susie, I have to ask you, I suppose just watching that report, the one thing that comes to mind, what was it about Corrie Ten Boom and her family that decided that they would rescue Jewish people during the height of the occupation, by the Nazi occupation in the Netherlands? not only putting her life in danger, but also putting the life of her family in danger. What are the characteristics of someone like Corrie Ten Boom that would actually put their whole life in danger for the Jewish people?
I believe the Lord specifically prepared that family through their experience. Her father's father, her grandfather, her father, they already had relationships in the Jewish community of Harlem, and they were Bible-believing Christians. They took the Bible seriously, and they could not stand by. You know, the participants of the Holocaust are really in three categories: murderers, victims, and bystanders. Most people were bystanders, and they refused to be bystanders. And it started with her brother, William, who did his doctoral thesis in Germany, and he was writing on the rise of anti-Semitism in Germany. His thesis, people laughed. They thought, this is a crazy, they just kind of laughed at it. But a few years later, nobody was laughing at that thesis because the things he predicted were coming true. And he was the first Ten Boom that had begun to help Jews. He was taking Jews in from Germany and housing them in a retirement home that he ran. In fact, he and his family moved out into the corridor of the home so that people could have the rooms. He was an amazing man. And Corrie and her father and sister, who lived together in the house you saw in the film, they fell into it just naturally. Someone knocking on the door, desperate, and they opened their door, and they kept opening their door until the day that they were arrested.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. Susie, I have to ask you, a few years ago I interviewed a famous Dutch Bible teacher. His name's, let me look at my notes now, Reverend Willem Glassauer from Christians for Israel in the Netherlands. And he said something very profound that has touched me ever since I've done the program. And he said the reason that, for example, the Dutch people supported the Jewish people and wanted to protect them so many is because of the influence of Calvin, theology of Calvin. But he said with the Germans, they were influenced then by the teachings of Martin Luther. Of course, we know a lot of his writings were anti-Semitic, and even Hitler used Martin Luther's words to justify his actions.
Yes.
But I thought that was very significant, how theology can be so deep rooted in a society, in a country, that the Dutch people decided to, on the whole, not all of them, but a lot of them, do so much to help and rescue the Jewish people.
Yes.
What does that say about the Dutch people?
I think if you go to Yad Vashem and you survey they have an avenue of the righteous where they have honored the Gentiles that have rescued Jews, and there are more Dutch. There are so many Dutch people. A high percentage of Dutch people did rescue others. Now, also a high percentage of Dutch Jews were lost. And so there's why did that happen? But it did. And they say that the reason so many Dutch Jews were lost is they didn't have forests. The Dutch people were very neat with their bookkeeping and record keeping, so the Nazis were quickly able to identify the Jews and claim them. But I think that your point that the pastor made is good, because our theology is caught, not taught. And theology caught has consequences. And certainly the influence of Martin Luther, Hitler took Martin Luther's words and did it. It's tragic. And when people hear that our beloved Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation of the Church, could have written the things that he wrote, it hurts. A real Christian wrote things that someone so cruel could use against the Jewish people. We have to remember and stay steadfast with the Lord and what he would have us do. I don't have any answers. It's hard to look back and see what happened all over Europe. And people have a hurting nature. I think if they're not really close to the Lord, they just go along with the group because that's the easier route.
So back to, for example, Corrie. How did she save 800 Jewish people by hiding them in her home? But also she did a lot of work with the Dutch resistance, and then the Dutch resistance put her in charge of looking all over the all the safe houses all over the Netherlands during the occupation.
Yes, she had a group of about 80 people that worked with her. So all these people didn't necessarily stay in their home. They only had 4 permanent Jewish guests in their home. Other people came in and out. But her group had about 80 different people that were helping. She didn't even know them all. And they had set up their home and their watch shop as the headquarters. And they had a phone system. A lot of people didn't even have their phones working anymore, but their phone was working. And they communicated as if their guests were watches. And
clever.
She would say, someone would call and say, I have a watch that is causing us difficulty. And, well, how is that? Well, the face of this watch is very old-fashioned. And that would mean that I've got a Jew that looks very Jewish, and that was the hardest Jew to find a place for. And so they would had codes, and an electrician came in and ran wires around the house with buzzers so that they could press the buzzer, and all the guests could run to the hiding place, which was built behind a wall in her bedroom. So they had a system all worked out. And
amazing. So, for example, we know with the story of Corrie that sadly that she was betrayed, probably to the SS, in which they took her to Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany. How much she must have felt about being betrayed by her own countrymen?
Well, that was one of the first things that, she hated him. She hated the man when she found out who it was. But when Corrie said that when she hated him, her sister Betsy prayed for him and inspired her to forgive him herself. And she said that was a real relief to have given him forgiveness.
Amazing.
Amazing.
And how did Corrie cope with being in a Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany? Because there's a quite amazing story about the miracle of the fleas.
Yes, the miracle of the fleas. When they reached Ravensbrück, Corrie was just devastated. And my line in my play is, Betsy, how can we live with this? Something like that. How can we survive this place? And Betsy reminded her of the passage of scriptures that says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication and thanksgiving, make your requests be made known to God. And Betsy said, there's our key, thanksgiving. We'll thank him for this place. And of course, Corrie said, how can we thank him for this place? But Betsy began to pray, and they found that they could thank him for many things. And they were so thankful that they had been able to smuggle in a small Bible, both Testaments, and they had that. She said, she made the comment, this was better than bread, having the Bible. And the lice story is so wonderful because the lice were terrible, and Betsy prayed thanking God for the lice, and Corrie just thought that, she said, I can't do that. But sometime later, she found that the lice had been the reason that they could go to a certain corner and pray and read their Bible together. They weren't disturbed by guards because the guards didn't want to go to that corner. Why? Because it was infested with lice. And, they could laugh that, God can use anything. Lice? Yes, he can use lice. So we thank him for everything. And at the end of my play, I remind the people of one of the things that I learned from Corrie Ten Boom, which is Every experience the Lord allows into our lives is the perfect preparation for the future that only He can see. He's planning something for us. He's got a plan for our lives. He's getting us ready for something that we don't know about. Like the Ten Booms, their pastor visited, their great-grandfather did this praying for the Jews, and they were being prepared. They were being groomed for what they had to do. And the suffering, Corrie Ten Boom said something. She said that during concentration camp, Ravensbrück, she and Betsy were often told the why of their suffering. She said, the Lord said, "It is for my people you must suffer this." And, you know, she said, for my people you must suffer this. Now, Simon, when you hear that, what do you think? Jews? I do.
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
people?
Yes.
If the Lord was allowing them to suffer for the Jews, it wasn't for the Jews of her generation, because they didn't rescue any more Jews after Ravensbrück. Corrie didn't go and speak in synagogues or preach to Jews. If the Lord really said to them, it's for my people you must suffer this, I believe He meant for the Jews of our generation. In that, Corrie Ten Boom, who had no children, has us as spiritual heirs, that we are taking on that mantle of loving the Jews, of befriending, supporting, standing with the Jews. And I believe that there's no better role model than Corrie Ten Boom and her family. And God prepared them. He prepared them to suffer. And they never had regrets. The family did not have regrets. They had a strong love for the Lord. They even studied Hebrew. The rabbi of the town that they were in even brought his precious book collection to the Ten Boom home, hoping that it would survive the war. So this family was prepared and used for such a time as this. For their time. And
Yes.
now I believe we can, my goal, or feel like the calling on my life, is to resurrect Miss Ten Boom's memory for this generation. Many of our children don't know the story of Corrie Ten Boom. We need moral clarity. We need moral heroes.
Absolutely.
And what better hero? And she was just a simple woman. She was past her prime, as they say. And yet God took her and used her and her family, and they did it right. And I'm grateful that we have people like Corrie Ten Boom to look to, and to point us to the Lord, and to do it the Lord's way. And I'm so grateful that He opened my eyes to His feelings for the Jews. You know, sometimes you're in a prayer group and they're saying, "Oh, please open the eyes of the Jews." I say, please open the eyes of the church. Open our eyes that we can see the Jewish people like God sees them. And I think Corrie Ten Boom and her family saw the Jews through God's eyes.
Amazing. So let's have a look at this rare interview that was conducted by Pat Robinson on CBN back in 1974, where he interviews Corrie Ten Boom.
We're so delighted to have you back with us on the 700 Club. We appreciate you so much. You know, as we were talking before, perhaps some of the people who are watching now are not familiar with your experience when, as I understand, you were hiding Jewish people in Holland.
Yes.
And the Nazis, the Germans, took you and because of this and put you into prison.
Yes.
And how long were you in the prison?
I was 11 months a prisoner. First 4 months in solitary confinement, alone in a cell, and then in a concentration camp in Holland, a German concentration camp, and then in Ravensbrück, the terrible place north of Berlin. And that's where my sister died.
She died there.
Yes.
And in that time, God somehow kept you sweet and tender towards him. How did you do it? How did you keep from being just terribly despairing? What kept you buoyed up at this time?
That's good. What kept you? Who kept me up?
Who kept you?
I can tell you, there are circumstances that you cannot do anything, and it was only the Lord who has carried me through, and it is so good that I have experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
For I had always believed. Now I know from experience that Jesus' light is stronger than the deepest darkness.
Praise God.
And a child of God cannot go so deep, always deeper are the everlasting arms that carry you.
It matters not how dark it is.
No.
His light is always
Yes,
greater.
yes, the devil is strong, but his power is limited, and Jesus' power is unlimited.
And you've been there, and you know. Was His grace always sufficient? There was never a time when His grace was not sufficient for you.
Indeed, it was always sufficient, but sometimes I lost courage.
You did?
And yes, and I remember that once I said, when I looked on the stars, I said, "Oh Lord, all the stars are in your guidance, but have you forgotten your child, Corrie Ten Boom?" And then, but I had my Bible with me, and that was such a great joy. And then in the Bible I read that the hairs of our head are numbered, and God has the whole universe in his hands. That means that God has a telescopic and a microscopic interest in us.
And he knew you by name and everything about you, and he loved you, even in the midst of it.
Yes, and the Bible was a forbidden book.
How did you get that copy, or the copy into the concentration camp?
That was a miracle.
Yeah.
You know, when we entered, I had a little Bible, but it was a small Bible, but the whole Bible, Old and New Testament, and I had it hidden under my clothing on my back, and I saw that they took away everything what we had hidden, and I was so scared that I said, "Oh Lord, send your angels, let they surround me."
Yes.
But then I thought, yes, but angels are spirits, and you can look through a spirit, and these people may not see me. So I said, "Oh God, let your angels this time not be transparent." You can pray very unorthodox when you are in great need, but God did it. The woman who stood before me was searched, and then my sister who was behind me, and they did not see me. And so I came in the prison with my Bible.
God just actually blinded them. They couldn't see you. The angels had just...
No. We mustn't be too amazed when God does miracles.
Well, of course.
And then it was really so that when we were there, I had to live in a room with 700 prisoners, and it was built for 200. And it was terrible dirty.
Are you going overseas again, do you think?
My times are in God's hands. And you know, that film that is made of the hiding place, that comes in the theaters, and that will come in the theaters all over the world.
Praise the Lord. What a testimony.
You understand that when people have seen the story of Corrie Ten Boom, and the real Corrie Ten Boom comes to give a message, then then people will come to see and to hear the real Corrie Ten Boom.
Well, I think they're doing it now without the movie, but they'll do it a lot more.
And you know, that film, that is so beautiful, that movie shows what it means to go through terrible suffering with Jesus.
Praise God.
And that is the message that we must know now, because many people go through terrible suffering.
You think in America we're going to go through suffering?
Yes, sir.
You think it?
I believe that. It is what the Bible tells, that we can, but we have nothing to fear.
Amen.
Because Jesus is victor, and he will never let us down.
Praise God.
But, my times are in God's hands. Well, and I go where he tells me to go. Let us really do what the Lord tells us to do, and let us be the light of the world. We stand on victory ground, because Jesus was victor, he is victor, and he will be victor, and he's coming soon. What a joy. The best he's yet to be.
Hallelujah. God bless you. Thank you for being here.
That gives us a little bit of an insight into Corrie Ten Boom herself, as that was a news archive clip all the way back from 1974. Just absolutely amazing, and we can learn so much from Corrie Ten Boom just by watching that small news clip produced by CBN. Susie, I have to put the story and the life of Corrie Ten Boom in its kind of modern context, because sadly today we are seeing a global rise of Jew hatred around the world, even to the extent of reaching the United States, which would have been unheard of a few years ago.
Right.
And in a sense, my question really is probably the most important question of the entire program. What are the lessons that we can learn from Corrie Ten Boom, and how can that prepare us watching this program today for the challenges that lie ahead in very difficult political and economic times that we're living in?
That's a tough question. Her message that there's no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still is very strong. And we have to remember that no matter what is going on around us, we have the love of God, and that is going to take us through, and we need to do the right thing. And how do you know the right thing? It's by staying close to Him and the Word of God, and we don't become bystanders. Right now, I feel like the new anti-Semitism is anti-Israel. The whole world seems to blame Israel for everything that goes wrong in the Middle East. And everything's not Israel's fault. My experience, having been to Israel 18 times, says that the Jewish people long for peace. That's all they talk about, peace, peace. They are a peaceful people. They crave peace. They have their entire history. They've just wanted to be peace people, and people leave them alone. And we as Christians, we read the Bible. I'm not a prophet. I don't know how to interpret the end times. I don't have any particular scenario of how it's going to come down. But I know that He will not forsake the Jews, and I know that we should be standing with the Jews, and that's where I plan to stand. And I don't care what it looks like. My stand with the Jews is going to, and with Him, is going to keep me safe. That's the only advice I could give people.
That's good advice. In terms of your play, we're down to the last 3 minutes of the program, Susie.
Yes.
In terms of your acting ability, and in terms of you taking on the role of Corrie Ten Boom, what is the main message that you want to convey to the audience watching your performance?
The main message I want to convey is that God is real. That, we don't have to be special or say things in a special way or go through a certain ceremony. God is real, and He's available, and He cares, and He's got a plan. I think that is the message. I do hope Christians will have a heart for the Jews and to look back and see what the Jews have gone through, and have a connection, make a connection with the Jews. I want the Jews to see the Christians have that experience. And when I'm in an audience with both Christians and Jews, and a Jew looks over and sees a Christian wiping their eye, that's almost comforting. They see our pain, and vice versa. It has a healing effect. Her story brings our two groups together. As Jews see us want to emulate Corrie Ten Boom, when we want to live up to her standards, that's a comforting thing to Jewish people. And when Christian people see Jews that maybe they think a lot of us have misconceptions about Jews, and they think, well, they're unfeeling, or they're hard, or they're tough people, and they see, no, they're tender, they're soft-hearted people. Walls come down when they see Corrie Ten Boom. My dream, as I told you earlier, is to take the show not just to churches and synagogues, which I'm already doing, but also into secular theater, where people who are not necessarily believers could come and see the Lord, come and experience the drama.
I just want to thank you, Susie, for being my special guest on today's Middle East Report, and it's been an absolute pleasure to interview you today, and thank you for a very special programme.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you all for watching today's Middle East Report. I think we can learn some valuable lessons from the life of Corrie Ten Boom, and that stand is to stand with the Jewish people, to stand with Israel, despite the danger, despite the fear, and do what's right in God's eyes. So this song is in dedication to the incredible life of Corrie Ten Boom. So thank you for watching today's Middle East Report.
Broken heart, one more time, pick yourself up, why even cry? Broken pieces in your hands, wonder how you'll make it whole. You know you pray, this can't be the way. You cry, you say, something's gotta change. And man, this porcelain heart of mine. Someone said a broken heart would sting at first, then make you stronger. You wonder why this pain remains. Were hearts made whole just to break? You know you pray, this can't be the way. You cry, you say, something's gotta change. And mend this porcelain heart. Of mine. Creator, only you take brokenness and create it into beauty once again. You know you pray, this can't be the way. You cry, you say, something's gotta change. You know you pray, this can't be the way. You cry, you say, something's gotta change. And man, this porcelain